What happens when country music's biggest personality meets morning television's toughest interviewer, and neither one backs down? The answer shocked millions of viewers and ended with security being called to studio. 1A Blake Shelton walked onto the Today Show set that morning expecting the usual softball. Questions about his latest album and upcoming tour dates. Instead, he found Savannah Guthrie in full investigative mode, armed with questions that could make even a seasoned politician sweat. From the moment the cameras rolled, the tension in the studio crackled like electricity before a thunderstorm. "Blake Shelton, welcome back to the Today Show," Savannah began. Her smile was perfectly practiced, but her eyes were sharp. "Let's dive right in. Your new single has been climbing the charts, but there's been some controversy surrounding the songwriting credits. Care to explain why 3 different writers claim they never received proper compensation?" Blake's trademark grin faltered for just a split second, something Savannah noticed immediately. He leaned back in his chair, trying to project his usual laid-back confidence, but his posture betrayed him. "Well, Savannah, I think there might be some confusion there. My team handles all the business side of things, and I trust them completely. If there are any issues, I'm sure they'll get sorted out." "That's interesting," Savannah pressed, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents. "Because I have signed statements here from all 3 writers saying they've been trying to reach your management for months with no response. One of them, Sarah Martinez, says she's considering legal action. Did you know about this?" The studio audience, who had expected a light-hearted morning chat, began to murmur. This wasn't the interview they'd anticipated. Blake's jaw tightened. When he spoke again, his Oklahoma drawl carried a sharper edge. "Look, Savannah, I came here to talk about my music and my fans, not to get ambushed with a bunch of legal mumbo-jumbo that doesn't belong on a morning show. People tune into the Today Show to start their day with something positive, not to watch you try to play gotcha journalism." Savannah leaned forward, undeterred. "I'm just asking legitimate questions about your business practices, Blake. Don't your fans deserve to know whether the people who help create your music are being treated fairly?" "My fans know exactly who I am," Blake shot back, his voice rising enough that the sound crew adjusted levels. "They've supported me for over 20 years because I'm real with them. I don't hide behind corporate speak or twist everything into some scandal. Unlike some people in this business." The remark hung in the air like a challenge. Savannah's smile thinned. "Some people in this business? Are you referring to journalists who ask tough questions? Because that's literally our job. Your job is supposed to be informing people, not trying to destroy careers for ratings," Blake replied, gripping the arms of his chair. "I've done hundreds of interviews. I can tell the difference between a real journalist and someone looking to make headlines off my name." Behind the cameras, a producer waved frantically, trying to steer Savannah back to safer ground. But she was locked in. This was the kind of moment that defined careers. "Let's talk about headlines then," she continued smoothly. "Last month, you criticized streaming platforms for hurting traditional country music. But your own label has been pushing for more streaming deals. Isn't that hypocritical?" Blake laughed sharply. "Hypocritical? That's rich. Coming from someone who works for a network that claims to support independent artists while paying them pennies to perform on morning shows. How much did NBC pay that indie folk singer who performed here last week, Savannah? Enough to cover her gas money home?" The jab caught Savannah off guard. For the first time, her composure cracked. "We're not here to discuss NBC's business practices. Blake, we're here to discuss yours." "Oh, so it's okay when you do it," Blake said, his voice growing louder. "But when I point out the same thing, suddenly it's off limits? That's the double standard I'm talking about. You media people think you can say whatever you want about us, but the second we push back, we're the bad guys." The producer's gestures turned frantic, but Savannah pressed on. "There's a difference between holding public figures accountable and deflecting from legitimate questions with personal attacks." "Personal attacks?" Blake suddenly stood, his chair rolling back. "Lady, You've been attacking me personally since I sat down. You came loaded with a folder full of accusations, and now you want to lecture me about personal attacks? The studio went silent except for the hum of equipment. Camera operators instinctively zoomed in, capturing every detail of the confrontation. Savannah remained seated, gripping her notes so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Blake," she said steadily, her voice edged with steel, "I think you should sit down, and we can discuss this like adults." "Adults?" Blake's laugh was bitter. "Adults don't ambush people on live television with gotcha questions designed to make them look bad." Blake's voice cut through the studio like a thunderclap. "What you're doing here isn't journalism. It's a hit job, and I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore." Savannah's eyes flashed with something dangerous. When she spoke again, her voice carried the cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "A hit job? Asking you about publicly documented disputes with songwriters is standard journalism. If you can't handle basic questions about your business practices, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." Blake stepped closer to the desk, his massive frame casting a shadow over the seated host. "Basic questions? You call ambushing someone with legal documents and accusations basic questions? I've been in this business longer than you've been on television, sweetheart, and I know the difference between an interview and an interrogation." The condescending word landed like a slap. Savannah's professional mask slipped for the first time. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, every syllable brimming with controlled fury. "Did you just call me sweetheart on national television while trying to intimidate me? Because if you did, we're going to have a much bigger problem than songwriting credits." "I'll call you whatever I want when you're treating me like a criminal," Blake shot back, his Oklahoma accent growing thicker with each word. "You don't get to sit there in your fancy studio and act like you're some kind of moral authority when your own network has more scandals than a soap opera. How many of your colleagues have been fired for inappropriate behavior in the last 5 years, Savannah?" The audience gasped. Several in the front row pulled out their phones, breaking the no recording policy, sensing they were witnessing television history. Savannah's co-hosts, who had been watching nervously from the sidelines, began moving closer, ready to intervene if necessary. "My colleagues' behavior has nothing to do with your business practices," Savannah replied, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly as she shuffled her notes. "And using their mistakes to deflect from your own issues is exactly the kind of behavior I'd expect from someone who doesn't want to take responsibility." Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Responsibility? You want to talk about responsibility? I've given millions of dollars to charity, supported countless up-and-coming artists, and brought country music to people who never would have heard it otherwise. What have you done besides tear people down for a living? I've exposed corruption, held powerful people accountable, and given a voice to those who don't have platforms," Savannah fired back, standing now to match his energy. "Including those 3 songwriters you apparently forgot to pay, but I guess helping regular people doesn't matter as much as protecting your image, does it? Those songwriters will get paid if they deserve it," Blake snarled. "But I'm not going to let some morning show host who's never written a song in her life tell me how the music business works. You wouldn't last 5 minutes in Nashville. And you clearly can't last 5 minutes under basic scrutiny without having a meltdown," Savannah countered. "This is exactly the kind of behavior those songwriters described in their statements. Aggressive, dismissive, and completely unwilling to accept any criticism." Blake's face reddened, his fists clenched at his sides. "Meltdown? Lady, you haven't seen a meltdown yet. I came here as a favor to your producers because they begged my management for months to get me on this show. I could have gone anywhere, but I chose the Today Show because I thought you people had some class. Clearly, I was wrong." "Class?" Savannah's voice finally rose, her calm veneer cracking. "You're standing over me, trying to intimidate me on live television, calling me condescending names and attacking my network, and you want to lecture me about class? Sit down, Blake, before you embarrass yourself further. I'm not sitting down for anybody, Blake growled. Especially not some self-righteous reporter who thinks she can ambush me with accusations and then play the victim when I fight back. You picked this fight, Savannah, not me. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Camera operators zoomed in tightly on their faces, capturing every micro-expression of rage and defiance. The audience sat frozen, some covering their mouths in shock, others leaning forward, riveted by the unprecedented confrontation. Behind the cameras, Savannah's producer frantically gestured for a commercial break, but both combatants were too locked in to notice. This was no longer a professional interview. It had become something raw, personal, and volatile. I didn't pick anything, Savannah said through gritted teeth. I asked legitimate questions that any competent publicist would have prepared you for. The fact that you can't handle basic accountability tells me everything I need to know about your character. My character? Blake's voice boomed so loudly it echoed into other parts of the building. You want to question my character when you make your living destroying reputations? When you take private business disputes and turn them into public spectacles for ratings? You pretend to care about these songwriters, but really, you just want to use them as weapons against me. I care about fairness and justice, Savannah shot back. Two concepts you clearly struggle with, and I won't be lectured about ethics by someone who apparently can't even pay the people who help make his music. Those people will be taken care of through proper legal channels, Blake roared, not through some carnival sideshow on morning television. But you don't care about that, because it doesn't make good TV, does it? You'd rather drag me through the mud on live television than let the legal system work. The same legal system those songwriters say you've been avoiding for months, Savannah countered, her voice like ice. The same system you're suddenly hiding behind when confronted with the consequences of your actions. Blake stepped even closer, looming over Savannah's desk. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm standing right here, taking your best shots, while you sit safe behind that desk throwing accusations like grenades. If you call that hiding, then we've got very different definitions of the word. The confrontation had reached a boiling point no one in the studio had ever seen before. Security personnel began edging closer to the set, uncertain how to proceed. This wasn't just a heated interview anymore. It was a war of wills between two people who refused to back down. Savannah straightened, her posture matching his aggression with steely determination. You want to talk about taking shots? Let's talk about the pattern here, Blake. This isn't the first time you've had public disputes with collaborators, your former band members, your previous management. The question hit Blake like a physical blow. His face went from red to nearly purple. When he spoke, his voice was a low growl that the microphones barely picked up. You don't know anything about my relationships with my band or my team. You're just repeating gossip and rumors because it fits your narrative. Those people you're talking about left for their own reasons, not because of anything I did. Their own reasons. Savannah pulled out another sheet of paper from her folder. Because I have a statement here from your former drummer saying you refused to give him credit on songs he helped arrange, and another from your ex-manager claiming you broke multiple contractual agreements. Should I read them on air, or would you like to address these allegations directly? Blake's hands slammed down on Savannah's desk with such force that her coffee mug jumped and spilled across her notes. The sound echoed through the studio like a gunshot, and several audience members screamed. You are not reading anything else from that folder on my showtime. I don't care what lies people have told you, or what fictional statements you've cooked up in your producer meetings. I'm done playing your games. Your showtime? Savannah's voice was deadly quiet now. This is the Today Show, not the Blake Shelton Ego Hour. And those aren't fictional statements. They're sworn affidavits I can back up with documentation. If you can't handle the truth about your business practices being exposed, then maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Maybe you shouldn't be in journalism, Blake fired back, his voice echoing off the studio walls. If you think ambushing people with legal documents is ethical reporting, what's next, Savannah? Are you going to start reading my divorce papers on air? Maybe dig up some old tax returns? Where does your crusade for truth end and your hunger for ratings begin? Savannah's eyes flashed dangerously. Don't you dare question my journalistic integrity. I've won awards for exposing corruption and holding powerful people accountable. I've risked my career to tell important stories others were afraid to touch. I don't need to manufacture drama when people like you provide plenty of it naturally. Awards? Blake's laugh was harsh and mocking. You mean participation trophies from other journalists who do the same hit job reporting you do? Congratulations, Savannah. You've impressed a bunch of people who make their living tearing others down. I'm sure your parents are proud. The personal attack on her parents was the final straw. Savannah's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped. How dare you bring my family into this? My parents taught me to stand up for what's right, and to not be intimidated by bullies who think their fame makes them untouchable. Something your parents apparently forgot to teach you. Blake stepped around the desk now, moving into Savannah's personal space. My parents taught me to respect people who deserve respect, and to fight back against people who don't. Guess which category you fall into, sweetheart? Back off, Blake. Savannah's voice was steady, but her body language showed she was ready for whatever came next. You're on camera making threats against a journalist for doing her job. Is this really how you want America to remember you? I'm not making threats. I'm making promises, Blake snarled. Promise number 1, I'm never coming back on this network again. Promise number 2, I'm going to make sure every artist I know understands exactly what kind of ambush journalism you people practice here. And promise number 3, those songwriters you're so concerned about are going to find out that you use their legitimate concerns as weapons in your personal vendetta against me. Personal vendetta? Savannah was incredulous. I didn't even know who you were beyond your music until you walked in here and started acting like a spoiled child who can't handle criticism. This isn't personal for me, Blake. This is professional, but you've made it personal by attacking me, my network, and my family, instead of just answering simple questions about your business practices. Blake was close enough now that the cameras couldn't get both of them in frame. Simple questions? You call character assassination simple questions? You came locked and loaded with every piece of negative information you could find about me, and you expected me to just sit there and take it with a smile. Well, here's a newsflash, Princess. I don't work for NBC, and I don't have to play by your rules. And here's a newsflash for you, country boy, Savannah shot back. When you're a public figure making millions of dollars off fans who trust you, you don't get to hide behind your ego when someone asks you to explain your actions. Those songwriters deserve answers, and so do your fans. My fans know who I am, and they trust me, because I've earned that trust over 20 years in this business, Blake roared. I don't need some talking head who's never created anything in her life to tell me about my relationship with my fans. You don't speak for them, you don't represent them, and you sure as hell don't understand them. Security guards were now moving on to the set, unsure whether to physically intervene, but knowing the situation was spiraling completely out of control. The head of security spoke into his radio, calling for additional personnel as the confrontation showed no signs of cooling down. I understand them enough to know they deserve better than an artist who apparently can't even treat his collaborators fairly, Savannah said, her voice carrying across the studio. And I understand journalism enough to know that accountability isn't optional just because someone is famous and used to getting their way. Blake turned toward the cameras, addressing the audience directly. You see this, folks? This is what passes for journalism now. Gotcha questions, character assassination, and moral superiority from people who wouldn't last 5 minutes in the real world.